And then in 1967, he produced The White House, which was the time he spent in the tuberculosis sanitarium in the Laurentian Mountains. And he was sent there as shortly after he arrived in Canada, because he was suspected of having tuberculosis. In fact, he didn't have it. He was malnourished, but they kept him there, so he chronicles life there, the hopes, the aspirations of basically I would say the panoply of Jewish immigrants in Canada. Um, 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 Bundists, secularists, religious people. There's a communist character in them. It's poetry in a novel form, reflecting on it. I mean, how hard he must have worked to make everything rhyme. He told me that he often would invent words, shape words so that they would rhyme. It's distinct. I mean, and when you read his prose, for example, I mean, his prose it's just different than his poetry. His poetry is concise. It's also the story of the romance between my parents, how they met. My mother was his nurse, and there's there are lots of stanzas about my mother's aunt, not wanting her to marry him because she had him all lined up with a doctor, right? And she foolishly, went off with this poet who made a living selling magazines door to door. But the other thing that's unique about it too is his descriptions about French Canadian farmers who lived near the sanitarium, and the interrelationships between the patients at the sanitarium and the farmers. One of the things that struck me about reading The White House was the range of themes that he dealt with as well. Like the portrayals of the characters, their political affiliations, their views about events in the world, their aspirations. I think that's one of the things that, to me anyway, that makes The White House so interesting is that there's lots of really different strands to it. They're ordinary people who, a patient has an illness. His family comes to visit him regularly once a week, but the case is hopeless. The person dies. There are other people who are kind of abandoned by their families, and Gilman points this out in the chapters and the other writers, that in many instances the spouses kind of abandon the people who are in the sanitarium, that they took up with other people. They didn't see that their spouse was ever going to come out of the sanitarium, and they had affairs with others. Oh my God, affairs. I mean, imagine the scandal here, right? But apparently it was, and my father writes about this. He also talks about the charity ladies who come to the institutions, who people who are very well off and who think they're really doing, they're contributing, they're doing good work. And I guess they were doing good work. I mean, after all, they were volunteering, but he says there's a sense of sort of, there's a class difference, there's a sense of maybe a bit of snobbery about what they're doing. And then, of course, there's depictions of French Canadian farmers and how they live and stuff. So that was his book in 1967. It was, I think, the first book to be translated into English, and I think it's the best translation of any of them. It was done by this man in Philadelphia, Max Rosenfeld, and it's translated into Hebrew. Rosenfeld, in his translation of White House, did his level best to keep the rhythm of his work. He tried to make stuff rhyme in English, sometimes with not such good results. Like he has one stanza where he rhymed waltz with schmaltz. It was really but he did a very good job. I mean, he he really had a poet's sensitivity in translating the work. Interestingly, the sanitarium was really quite interested in the publication of the book. When the book was translated, they held a reception for him in the sanitarium in Mount Sinai. They were, the rhythm of it, the rhyming, the verses, which obviously he worked very hard to have a rhythm, but also the diversity of the themes in the book. I mean, to me, were really, and as I said, we read it recently in our book group, was really made an impression on me.